To be able to better understand the concept of drug pharmacokinetics, particularly its absorption, let us first have a review of the concept of the drug solubility. To start, solubility is generally defined as the property of a solid, liquid, or gaseous chemical substance called solute to dissolve in a solid, liquid, or gaseous solvent to form a homogeneous solution of the solute in the solvent. To start, let us first define some common terms. So when we say solution, that is generally defined as a liquid in which a solid substance has been dissolved. So a solution is therefore composed of two parts or components. We have the solute and the solvent. The solute is the solid part, while the solvent is the liquid part. The solute is usually defined as a solid substance that is dissolved in a liquid, while the solvent is a liquid that can dissolve other substances. In relation to this, we can define solubility as the concentration of a solute in a solution at equilibrium in a given temperature. So this can be expressed as per weight or volume of a solvent. So for example, we have here a gram of a solute that is dissolved in 100 grams of a solvent. So that is per weight basis. We have here a gram of a solute that is dissolved in a volume of our solvent. A solution can also be classified according to its saturation. So when we say a saturated solution, that is a solution containing the maximum amount of a solute for a given amount of solvent at constant temperature and pressure. So for a saturated solution, if we are going to add a solute, it will not be able to dissolve. For an unsaturated solution, this is a solution that does not contain the maximum amount of solute for a given amount of solvent. So additional solute can dissolve in an unsaturated solution. For the supersaturated solution, this contains more solute than it can theoretically hold at a given temperature, so that addition of more solute causes the excess solute to precipitate. So we have here a diagram of the three classifications of our solution based on saturation. So this is according to increasing concentration. So we have here an unsaturated solution. When we are going to add a solute to our unsaturated solution, it will dissolve. So more solute will dissolve in unsaturated solution. For a saturated solution, so when we are going to add our solute to a saturated solution, it will not dissolve. For a supersaturated solution, addition of more solute will form precipitate, and the solution will become unstable, forming crystals. So we have here a diagram of our solution based on the three classifications: unsaturated, saturated, and supersaturated. So this one here is a unsaturated solution. This one here is a saturated solution, and this one here is a supersaturated solution. Solubility can also be defined in a quantitative and a qualitative way. In a quantitative way, solubility is defined as the concentration of a solute in a saturated solution at a certain temperature. In a qualitative way, solubility is defined as a spontaneous interaction of two or more substances that refers to our solute and solvent to form a homogeneous molecular dispersion. So not all substances dissolve in water. So we have here a rule of thumb: like dissolves like. So that polar solutes will tend to dissolve more in polar solvents. So for example, we have here our water. Water is a polar solvent, so it will also dissolve polar solutes. Non-polar solutes will tend to dissolve more in non-polar solvents. So for example, our oil is an example of a nonpolar solvent, so it will also dissolve nonpolar solutes. Some ionic compounds will dissolve in water. Of those that do, temperatures affect how much they dissolve. Solid usually dissolve more in warm water, while gases usually dissolve more in cool water. So water is a good solvent for salt, sugar, and similar compounds, because again, water is a polar substance, and it will also dissolve polar substances, such as salt and sugar. Mineral oil is good solvent for substances that are normally slightly soluble in water. So mineral oil is a nonpolar solvent, so it will also dissolve nonpolar or semipolar substances. So we have here the classification of our solvent. It can be classified as a polar solvent. So an example of this is water. Semipolar solvent, an example of this is alcohol. We also have here our nonpolar solvent, example is the mineral oil. There are different factors that will influence the solubility of a compound. So the solubility of a compound will depend upon the physical factor. So example of this is the particle size and the chemical properties of the solute and the solvent. Other factors that is important for solubility is temperature. So in general, as the temperature of a medium increase, the solubility of a compound will also increase. Another factor is the pressure. So in case of a solubility of a gas in liquid, the solubility increases as the pressure increases. So as an example of this is in aerosols. There are different means to express the solubility of a compound or a drug. So these include molarity, normality, molality, mole fraction, and percentage. Under the percentage, we have the percentage weight by weight, or weight in weight, percent weight per volume, and percent volume per volume. In expressing the solubility of a substance, now for example, in expressing the molality of a particular drug or a compound, we usually use the mole. So why do we use mole? So we use mole because atoms and molecules are too small, tiny to weigh, so that the concept of mole, which is a theoretical value or unit expressing the formula weight of a substance in gram, is usually used. So basically in here, we have here the examples of the relationship between the atomic weight, molecular weight, the molar mass, and the moles of a particular substance. So in here, for our first example, we have here oxygen. So oxygen is it is an atom, and it is also a diatomic gas. So an atom of oxygen has a molecular weight of 16. 16 is the atomic weight of our oxygen atom. So 16 is equivalent to 16 grams, which is the molar mass of our oxygen. And 16 grams of oxygen is equivalent to 1 mole of that particular substance. So 1 mole of oxygen atom is equal to 16 grams of oxygen. Since oxygen is a diatomic gas, so we can also express the molar mass of our oxygen as 32, because we need to multiply 16 by 2 to derive the molar mass of our oxygen. But in here, it only says that 1 mole of our oxygen atom is equal to 16 grams, or 1 mole of oxygen is equal to 32 grams, because our oxygen is a diatomic gas. So a gram ion of our chloride has a molecular weight of 35.5. So we get this from the periodic table in the periodic table. So a chloride ion has a atomic weight of 35.5, and in terms of the mass, now this is equivalent to 35.5 gram, and 1 mole of our chloride ion is equal to 35.5 grams. A gram molecule of our water has a molecular weight of 18, now because our oxygen here has an atomic weight of 16, and our hydrogen here has an atomic weight of 1. So since there are two hydrogen ions, so we add that. So we have 2, 1 plus 1, then we add that to 16 to get a total of 18 as our molecular weight. And this is equivalent to 18 grams, which is equal to 1 mole of water. So 1 mole of water is equivalent to 18 grams of water. Now that is the relationship between the molar mass, the mole, and the molecular weight of our compounds. So how do we define molarity? So molarity is defined as the number of moles or gram molecular weight of solute dissolved in 1 liter of solution. So we have here the formula of our molarity. So molarity is equal to the moles of a solute over the liters of our solution. So we have here an example on how to calculate the molarity of a particular compound given our moles and volume. So we have here an example or example problem. What is the molarity of a solution containing 0.75 moles NaCl in 4.2 liters of a solvent? So we have here two given. We have here the moles of a compound and the volume of our solution. So to get the molarity, so we have first to identify our moles, and that is 0.75 moles of NaCl. And we have here our volume, that is 4.2 liters. So to get our molarity, we just have to substitute our values here to our formula. Molarity is equal to the moles of our solute all over the liter of our solution. So we just divide the number of moles by the number of liters. So the resulting quotient will give you the number of moles per liter of solution, otherwise known as molarity. So the unit of molarity are expressed in capital letter M, or moles per liter, so that a 1 M solution is said to be 1 molar. So to get the molarity, we need to round off the number of digits after the decimal point to 2 or 3, depending on your preference. So we have here a figure. Our answer here has been rounded off to the nearest 3 decimal places. When we are going to write our answer, so we must abbreviate the molarity with capital letter M and state the chemical abbreviation of the solute involved. So in this example, we have a 0.179 M of NaCl. So this is the molarity of our solution. We also have another example of calculating molarity, and that is calculating molarity with mass and volume. So the given here are mass and volume. An example problem is, what is the molarity of a solution made by dissolving 3.4 grams of potassium permanganate in 5.2 liters of water? So we have here our formula in computing molarity. So moles of solute over the liters of the solution. And the given here are mass and volume. So the mass is equal to 3.4 grams of potassium permanganate, and the volume of our solution in liters is 5.2 liters. So to be able to compute for our molarity, our next step is that we are going to find the molar mass of our solute. So to calculate the number of moles from the mass or grams of the solute used, we must first determine the molar mass of the solute. So to be able to do this, this can be done by adding together the separate molar masses of each element found in the solution. So our solute here is potassium permanganate. So potassium permanganate is composed of three compounds. Now we have, or three elements. Now we have our potassium, our manganese, and our oxygen. So there is a 1 mole of potassium in potassium permanganate. There is also 1 mole of manganese, and there are 4 moles of our oxygen atom. So we are going to find the molar mass of each element using the periodic table of elements. So this is indicated, the molar mass of our elements here are indicated in the periodic table of elements. So we are just going to add in the individual molar masses. So for example here, for our potassium, it has a molar mass of 39.1. And we are going to add that with the molar mass of manganese, which is 54.938. And we are also going to add that with the molar mass of oxygen, which is 15.9994. We are going to multiply it by 4 because there are 4 atoms of oxygen in potassium permanganate. So the total molar mass of our solute is 158.0339, and round it off to 158 grams. So we already have taken, or we already derived the molar mass of our potassium permanganate, and that is equivalent to 158 grams. The next step is that we're to compute for molarity is that we are going to convert that into moles. So to convert the grams into moles, we need to multiply the number of grams of solute in the solution by a conversion factor of 1 mole over the formula weight or the molar mass of our potassium permanganate. So a while ago, we have the given 3.4 grams of potassium permanganate in our problem. So we just need to multiply that with this conversion factor to derive this number here, 0.0215 moles, which will give us the number of moles of the solute for this equation. So we just need to multiply this 3.4 grams times 1 mole, and we are going to divide that with 158. So this cancels out, so that we have here our unit is in moles. So next is we are now going to substitute our formula here, our values here to our formula. So we are now going to divide the number of moles of our solute, 0.0215 moles of our potassium permanganate, by the volume of our solution, which is 5.2 liters, and we derive this answer, the molarity of our solution. So we are now going to round off our number into the nearest 3 decimal places, and we are going to express that we are going to use the unit M, capital letter M, and we also need to indicate our chemical compound, that is potassium permanganate. So that is 0.004 M of potassium permanganate. So that is our molarity. Another factor that can be used to express the solubility as well as the concentration of a solution is the molality. So molality is the ratio of the moles of a substance to kilogram of the solvent. So we have here The formula for our molality is the number of moles of the solute all over the mass of the solvent in kilograms. So our unit here is small letter m. The unit that is used to express molality is in moles per kilogram. How to calculate molality? So it is easy to calculate molality if we know the mass of the solute and the solvent in a solution. Molality is an intensive property and is therefore independent of the amount being measured. So this is our formula for our molality. Moles of a solute divided by the kilograms of our solvent. So for an example, suppose we have 0.5 moles of sodium chloride that was dissolved in 1 kilogram of water, and calculate our molality rather. So to calculate for molality is equal to the moles of our solute divided by the kilograms of our solvent. So in here, now we have here the given is the moles of our solute is 0.5 moles divided by 1 kilogram of water. So this is equal to 0.5, and our unit here is moles per kilogram. Another example, calculate the molality of 29.8 grams of glucose dissolved in 622.8 grams of water. So our chemical formula here, so this is the chemical formula of our glucose, C6H12O6, and our solute here is at 29.6 grams of glucose, and our solvent here is 622.8 grams of water. So step 1, to find the molality of our solution, we must first find the molar mass of the glucose. So to find the molar mass of glucose, we need to refer to our periodic table of element and find the atomic weight of the individual element. So again, the glucose is composed of these elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So there are 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen in glucose. So carbon has an atomic weight of 12 and there are 6 atoms. Hydrogen has an atomic weight of 1.008 and there are 12. And oxygen has an atomic weight of 16 and there are 6. Again, we can get this in our periodic table of elements. The next step is that we are now going to add our the individual molar mass of our elements, and we need to multiply that with their number. For example, here for carbon, our atomic weight is 12.01, so we're going to multiply that with the number of carbons. Our hydrogen, so this is the atomic weight of hydrogen, multiply that with the number of hydrogen. And for oxygen, so this is atomic weight, multiply that with the number of oxygen to get our molar mass of our glucose. So glucose has a molar mass of 180.00 grams per mole. The next step is that we're going to find the number of moles of glucose. So to find the number of moles of glucose, we have here the formula, no mass divided by the molar mass. So the mass of our glucose, now as given in the problem, is 29.8 grams. And we are going to divide that with the molar mass of glucose, which is 180.00 grams per mole. So this is equivalent to 0.166 moles of our glucose. So the gram unit here cancels out, and we derive this answer for the moles of our glucose. After we derived the moles of our solute, we are now ready to find the concentration of our solution. So to get this, now we just substitute the values to our formula. Molality is equal to the moles of our solute divided by the kilograms of our solvent. So the moles of our solute is 0.166 moles of glucose. We're going to divide that with the mass of our solvent, that is equal to 0.6228 kilograms of water. And we derived now this number here. The concentration of the sugar solution is 0.267 m. So this is the molality of our sugar solution. So this slide here represents the difference between molarity and molality. So to differentiate the two, when we say molarity, that is the moles of the solute divided by the liters of our solution. When we say molality, that is the moles of the solute divided by the mass of our solvent in kilograms. So when we use the molarity, we usually have our dividend here. Our dividend is a solution, in liters, while for molality, our dividend here is the mass of our solvent in kilograms. So when we are going to use molarity, so to be able to remember this easily, molarity has only one L in its name, molarity, and it can also have an L in its formula. So the L here represents the volume of our solution. For molality, it has 2L in its name and it cannot have an L in its formula. So there is no L in the formula of molality. So that is one way to be able to remember the name as well as the formula of our of this molarity and molality. It is also said that molality is never equal to molarity, but the difference becomes smaller as the solutions become more dilute. In terms of being temperature dependent, molarity depends on temperature. Molarity will decrease as the temperature increases, since the amount of a solution will decrease from evaporation, while molality does not depend on temperature since mass does not change with temperature. We also have here a table now showing the difference between molarity and molality. So usually for the symbol in molarity, we use the capital letter M. For molality, we usually use the small letter m. For the formula, for the molarity, that is a mole per liter, and for the molality, that is mole per kilogram. So in terms of the effect of temperature, so molarity is affected by changes in temperature, and molality is not affected by temperature. In terms of the effect of pressure, so molarity is affected by pressure, and molality is not affected by pressure. In terms of the accuracy and the precision, molarity is said to be can be imprecise or inaccurate, while molality is considered to be very precise and accurate. Another way of expressing solubility is through mole fraction. So mole fraction is defined as the moles of the solute divided by the total moles of a solution. So we have here the formula in getting the mole fraction in X. So this is equal to moles of a solute divided by total mole of our solution. It can also be expressed as the moles of our solute divided by the mole of the solute plus the mole of our solvent. So we have here an example on how to calculate for the mole fraction. So calculate the mole fraction of carbon tetrachloride, CCl4, in solution if 2.5 moles of CCl4 is dissolved in 8 moles of our benzene. So to get the mole fraction, our mole fraction is equal to the moles of the X, that is our solute, divided by the total mole of our solution. So our given here is 2.5 moles of CCl4, so that this is the moles of our solute, and we are going to divide that with the total mole of our solution. So the total mole of our solution is equal to the moles of our solvent plus the moles of our solute. So the mole of our solute is 2.5, and we are going to add that with the moles of our solvent, benzene, that is equal to 8. So we are going to divide this by this one, so 2.5 plus 8.5, and we are going to get this answer. So this is the mole fraction of our carbon tetrachloride in this particular example. So since this is ratio, so we do not have a unit for mole fraction. Another way to express the solubility of a compound is by expressing it as the number in ml of a solvent in which 1 gram of a solute will dissolve. So an example of this is 1 gram of boric acid dissolves in 18 ml of water and 4 ml of glycerin. So this boric acid here refers to our solute, and the water and the glycerin here refers to our solvent. So this is an example of solubility expression by the United States Pharmacopoeia. So substances whose solubility values are not known are described by the following terms. So this is the solubility expression of different compounds or different drugs as listed by the USP, United States Pharmacopoeia. So in this diagram or in this table, we have here the different solubility definition, and the part and at this portion here, this represents the part of the solvent required for 1 part of a solute. So for example, when less than 1 part of a solvent is needed or is required to dissolve 1 part of the solute, that particular solute or that particular compound is said to be very soluble. When about 1 to 10 parts of a solvent is needed in order to dissolve 1 part of a solute, so that particular solute or that particular compound is said to be freely soluble. When more than 10,000 parts of a solvent is needed in order to dissolve 1 part of a solute, so that particular drug or that particular compound is said to be insoluble. So again, this is a solubility expression that is described from the USP, United States Pharmacopoeia. To illustrate this classification, an insoluble compound means that less than 0.1 grams of solute will dissolve in 100 grams of our solvent. An example of this is our barium sulfate. Barium sulfate is said to be insoluble in water because only 0.0002 grams of barium sulfate will dissolve in 100 grams of water, and this is less than 0.1 grams, so that this particular compound is classified as insoluble. We also have another classification, the slightly soluble. This means that 0.1 to 1 gram of solute will dissolve in 100 grams of solvent. So an example of this is the silver sulfate. This compound is said to be slightly soluble because for every 100 grams of solvent or water, it dissolves about there is about 0.8 grams of the compound that will be dissolved. For a soluble compound means that more than 1 gram of solute will dissolve in 100 grams of solvent. An example of this is salt. Salt will dissolve in water, so it is considered to be soluble. So 35.9 grams of NaCl will dissolve in 100 grams of water at 20 degrees Celsius.